Hi everybody, I'm Jeff with Virginia Paranormal Investigations, and tonight we came back down to colonial Yorktown, and last time we were down here we went down along the waterfront and hit some haunted places, and now we're up on the main street, and there are several more haunted locations up here. It's a very haunted strip, and once again our study or our area of focus is what impact does the increased traffic from the Pokemon Go players have on the paranormal activity here in Yorktown. So once again, the parking lot down the bottom of the hill was full. A lot of cars. We saw some people sitting in their cars at four-way stop signs and stuff, just sitting there with their phones out, I guess catching Pokemon. So up here on the main strip, it seems very dead. We haven't seen any people up here. Maybe there were people up here earlier, but there's definitely not now. Nonetheless, we're going to go along, we're going to hit some of the haunted places, because it's interesting to think that with all the people down below, could some of the spirits have lingered more so up here on the main strip to get away from the activity and from all the traffic down below the bluffs? I don't know, but it's a question we're going to try to answer tonight. So come on, let's venture off and explore the dark side of Yorktown. Our first stop down here along the main strip is going to be the Thomas Nelson house, which is behind us here. And this is where, if we look up to the top window in the attic, people have seen a bloody face of a Confederate soldier looking out this window. And that's because during the Civil War, this was used as a hospital, and the people that didn't have a good chance of surviving, they put them up in the attic, and a lot of people died up there during the Civil War. So we're going to observe out here and see if we can pick anything up. Right here you can see a cannonball lodged in the side of the house, and reportedly that dates back to the Revolutionary War, when Yorktown was under siege.
Out on Nelson Street, beside the Thomas Nelson house, and it is Saturday night. We'd like to know if there's anyone here with us right now. If there is, my name is Linda.
I'm Jeff. And we don't mean to trespass or intrude. We don't want to be here unwanted by any means. We would just like to know if there is anybody here with us, and if you have any messages or anything that you'd like to tell us, or maybe lead us to a way that we can help you if you need help.
Can you tell us your name?
How do you feel about all the people that have been walking around here? Does that bother you?
We've heard that Thomas Nelson's servant was killed here. Is that true?
Are there any soldiers here with us?
Did you hide in this house when the siege began? If so, can you tell us where you hid?
Can you tell us the name of the soldier who stands by the attic window? Well, we finished up our EVP session outside of the Thomas Nelson house, and we observed for a little bit. We took some pictures, and unfortunately we didn't catch a glimpse of the face in the window. So what we're going to do now is wander right across the street to the William Nelson property. And this is where the very prominent William Nelson house once stood. And during the siege, as the town was bombarded with colonial cannonballs, there were some British soldiers reportedly playing a card game in the William Nelson house. And let's just say a cannonball tore through that wall and their card game was disrupted, to put it lightly, as one of the soldiers was beheaded by the cannonball and the others scattered, and the bombardment ensued. Now, in this field linger some spirits from these British soldiers, and people have heard their voices, have heard their screams, and they believe it is the spirits of these soldiers running to take cover from the American firepower.
Yes.
So we're going to wander over here and see if we can hear some of these voices. Out in the back of the field, we have some very old, what look like they may have at one time been stairs. And I'm not sure if they're part of the William Nelson house that once stood here. Someone has told me that they are. I don't know how factual that is though. But as you can tell, they're very old. They've been here a long time. And they just kind of climb up the hill here towards the back of the field. And then out in the distance, we can see the Coleman Bridge. A pretty awesome view of it from up here in the water, and you can hear some of the voices down below. Most likely the Pokemon Go players that are swarming the boardwalk right now. But I'm thinking a spirit box session so that none of those voices are picked up as false readings on the recorder as an EVP.
That's probably a good idea. As Jeff said, we're standing back here against what is the marl cliff that divides the town into two pieces. And this marl cliff has not changed a whole lot over the years, except for maybe some erosion that's happened. But most of the time in colonial days, the houses were built up close to the road. So it's my belief that the house that once stood here, William Nelson's house, was probably nestled up against the road. These stairs that are here may have actually existed for them to climb up, and perhaps there was a path leading from the back of this property down to the waterfront. Just a theory, mind you, but this hill that these steps are cut into has probably been here since colonial days, as has the cliff. So we very well could be standing in the backyard of William Nelson's house, and it's probably a pretty good place to stand here and do a spirit session, simply because there probably would have been a lot of movement up and down this cliff if there was a path here. So let's turn this on and see if we can get things going.
And quite possibly a good place for reception.
Right. My name is Linda.
Jeff.
And we would like to know if there's anyone here with us. We don't mean to intrude or to be here unwanted. But we'd simply like to know if there's someone here, and if you could come speak to us for a moment.
I heard something sound like it said hello.
I
It could have
know.
very well been a radio voice, mind you, but
It could have been. It
nonetheless, kind of cool.
did sound like hello.
Are there any British soldiers here with us today?
Can you tell us what your name is?
Can you tell us what you were doing when the army attacked?
Where was William Nelson, the owner of the home? Where was President Nelson?
Could you tell us where you are from?
I heard Boston.
Interesting.
So, are you a patriot?
Can you tell us what year it is? So we finished up our spirit box session out here on the William Nelson property, and I gotta say, this is an eerie place. I mean, the field is lined with trees on either side, and of course, as you can hear in the video, I'm sure there's quite a breeze that is picked up, and as that breeze wraps around some of these trees and blows through the woods and the brush, there are some eerie noises that come out of there. And even though there is no one coming up on us, or there, at least not that we've seen, it sounds like it. At several times during the spirit box session and such, it sounds like something's walking up behind you, and I do attribute that to the wind in the trees.
Right. There are a lot of deer, a lot of other wildlife out here as well. So it very well could be that there's some deer walking around out there that, you know, might be making noise as well.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
But it is very spooky.
Very
spooky.
Spooky. So, nonetheless, on the spirit box, a couple of responses sounded like they did come through. You be the judge. You heard it. Now, keep in mind, a lot of the voices that come through are from a radio station. It does scan radio stations, so there are some natural voices that come through. The question is, was there a response to our question, to any of our questions? And if there was, that's a big coincidence for one of the voices to say a response to our question.
Right.
So that's when we kind of think maybe it's a little more than just one of the radio stations coming through.
Yeah.
So, but we're going to wander on down the street here, back out on the main street, and on to our next location. So walking down Main Street, I love this place. I love this strip. There's so many haunted locations about this strip. And we got to think, where are we going to go for the next location? Down the street here, we got Grace Episcopal Church. We got the old medical shop. We got the Swan Tavern. All of them have cool stories. Yes, York Hall.
Yeah, which is the site of the old courthouses that used to stand here.
Right, the courthouse that blew up. During the Civil War.
Like, yeah, blew up, caught fire like 2 times.
Well, during the Civil War, they stored munitions in there.
Right.
And it exploded and took out that half of the street.
Right.
I mean, it took out a lot of buildings, including the Swan Tavern across the street. Also, the old carrot tree right here behind us. Another haunted building. But I think if we go down, maybe just outside the Grace Episcopal Church cemetery, there's something cool that we might be able to see in there.
Okay.
Let's take a look. All right, so here we are in front of the Grace Episcopal Church, and it's in this very graveyard behind me where people have seen some strange occurrences. Now, one of the reports is that there is an apparition that happens in this graveyard, or that appears in this graveyard, an apparition of a colonial era funeral. And there have been a few different witnesses to this. One was way back in the 1700s, one was a lot more recently. And what they see is a whole funeral procession going on in this graveyard. They see the preacher reading from the book. They see a woman fall to her knees in very much grief, sorrow, and it's no wonder that the emotion that's involved and the emotion that happens during such a procession would leave an imprint on the pages of time, and perhaps that imprint is what people see. So we're gonna stand here outside of the cemetery. We're gonna look into the cemetery and see if we see anything going on. And also, I think the wind has died down a lot, and there's a few cars driving by, and we'll be able to differentiate between cars and voices. I think we're gonna do an EVP session, perhaps, right outside of the cemetery here, and see if we pick anything up.
We are in front of Grace Episcopal Church. I'm Linda.
I'm Jeff, and we don't mean to trespass or intrude or to be here unwanted by any means. We just want to talk to anybody who may be here and find out if there's anything we can do to help you, or perhaps if there's any kind of message that you would like to relay to us or to anybody that we could maybe help you get across. If there is anybody here with us right now, could you tell us your name?
We do have a constant trickle of water from a nearby fountain, I guess it is. When you attended this church, who was the pastor or the priest here?
Can you tell us whose funeral you attended?
When Union soldiers occupied the town, what did they do to the church?
Are there any Union soldiers here with us today?
Besides Jeff and myself, how many people are here with us?
We've heard of a woman who lingers in the church and is very upset. Do you know who she is?
Can you tell us the name of someone who got married here? Do you know if the church was ever destroyed? If so, how was it destroyed?
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was just a fraction of the haunted locations along Main Street here in Yorktown. Unfortunately, we can't get to them all in one night. You know, there's just so many in this town, and a lot of them are along this main strip here. But I think they're, you know, each very interesting. The stories behind them, the history behind them, and it's pretty cool to think that you might be able to catch a glimpse into history walking along this road at night. We went to some cool places. The William Nelson Field, where the William Nelson house once stood. Very eerie place, very dark. As we said, there's some weird noises out there that play tricks on you.
Yes.
Pokemon Go players still out and about, and it's well after midnight.
Yeah.
And they're still driving around. They're driving around the streets. Mainly, we haven't seen any on foot up here, but we've seen a little bit more traffic than normal.
Right.
Vehicular traffic.
Definitely.
Prime example.
There you
Right
go.
there.
Right there.
And another prime example. So, and one more
Jeez.
prime example. I think they rerouted I-64 down
the main
through Main Street in Yorktown.
Just a few minutes ago.
So, or either, you
And
know,
that's
they heard
not
we
it.
were down here recording and
Yeah.
they wanted to come and get some autographs, but for some reason, none of them are stopping. So, perhaps the autograph theory is not a correct one. But nonetheless, you wonder what kind of impact this increased traffic has on the paranormal activity, and that's why we're here tonight.
Right, right. I don't know. We're going to have to review the evidence to know for sure. It sounded like we did have some responses there in the William Nelson property. And I'm kind of curious about the EVP sessions that we did to see if there was anything that might have come through on one of those.
Yes. And ladies and gentlemen, for these videos, we don't often do an evidence review video.
Right.
But if we do find anything, we will post it. It will be on our website, vaparanormal.com.
Yes.
In case you didn't hear me because of the cars going by, vaparanormal.com. We will post any evidence we find. If there's nothing on there, we didn't get anything.
Right.
And a lot of times we don't.
Yes. Now keep in mind also that a lot of times when we're analyzing audio from an EVP session, we will hear voices that come through. If we cannot understand what those voices are saying, we're not going to declare it as evidence and bring it to you and show it to you.
Right.
We feel that a true EVP, to be able to say, okay, this is really evidence, we have to understand what the person is saying and make sure that it is a valid response to one of our questions that we're asking. So if we just hear, you know, who knows? That could have been a frog sitting over in the ditch, you know.
Right.
It could have been his stomach, you
Could
know.
have been.
I mean, there's
bowel.
yeah, anything that it could have been. So, yeah.
And when you're outside, especially in an outside environment like this, it's so uncontrolled.
It is.
We're not in a building that's soundproof by any means, and voices carry. Voices from down below the bluffs carry up. We heard them when we were in the William Nelson field. Sounds carry. There is a lot of wildlife out here.
Right.
Deer, raccoons. Not that they're, you know, talking by any means, but the noises they make, walking through the woods and rummaging around in the garbage cans, you know, and in the brush.
Squeaking and stuff, yeah.
Right, and when that sound carries, it can also sound like a muffled, not necessarily a muffled voice, but kind of an indiscernible noise. Is that a word?
Yes.
It is now.
So.
And like I said, we're only going to present the purest evidence that we have. You know, we're not going to make anything up. Like, you know,
some groups do.
Some people do. Some people
do.
It seems anyway. I don't know. But so, like I said, if it's not there, if it does, you know, check our website. We'll put it up on there. We'll put it on YouTube. We'll put it wherever. Because if we get a voice that's pure, a definite response, and a Class A EVP, you're going to hear about it.
Absolutely.
You're going to hear about it. So we're not going to bore you with an evidence review with us sitting there with headphones on, listening to a couple hours worth of crickets and our voices.
We'd rather bore you with the history. I mean, that,
right,
you know.
right. And the history of this town, awesome town. Once again, as I said before, a lot of history. The Revolutionary War, the Civil War.
Right.
It saw action. It saw bombardments of cannonballs. Remnants still in the house to my left here. I believe it's the Sessions House.
Yeah.
Still in the Thomas Nelson House, which is behind the camera there.
Right, right. It is this town, whether people realize it or not, played an extremely significant role in the development and the creation of this country. And if you don't know anything about Yorktown, look it up. This is an amazing place. If you like history, you probably already know a little bit about it. But if you look into some of the stories, particularly the stories like about when Cornwallis was pinned against the York River here, and the rest of his troops were across the river in the Gloucester Point. He was trying to escape Washington's troops that were closing in on him from the surrounding areas. And I believe it was on October 17th of one year, he tried to make it across this river, and a freak and sudden squall kicked up and ended up forcing him to abandon his plans. And not only that, but many of the small boats, the skiffs that he was using to try to cross his men over to the other point, were sunk. And I've heard that over 5,000 of his men were killed out here that night in that one freak sudden squall.
Yeah,
so,
a lot of death.
Yeah, a lot of interesting stories, yes.
And you know, as I said, a lot more many more places we could hit along this road, and we will.
Right.
Perhaps in our next trip down here, in our next episode, or one of our coming episodes of Pokemon Go and the paranormal.
Right.
You know, but like I said, we didn't have time to hit them all tonight, and plus we might need material for the next video, so we didn't want to put them all in this one.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, a portion of some of the haunted locations along Main Street in colonial Yorktown, as Pokemon Go players are running rampant in the streets.
Right. Or driving rampant.
Driving rampant, right. Has the activity changed? From what I saw, I haven't seen a whole lot of difference.
Right.
Between, this is a town that we've gone through this with a fine-tooth comb.
Yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of the historic buildings, we can't get permission to go inside of them.
Right.
But we've been through the streets and every portion of it that we're allowed to go into.
Yeah.
And
some were not.
Some were not. We've had several experiences down here.
Yes.
Seen some crazy things.
Right.
But tonight, not really much different than any other night.
No, it doesn't seem so. You know, I did discover a couple of places that seemed a little more spooky than they usually do.
Right.
But I don't know whether that was just maybe some effect from the full moon that we have above us.
Perhaps a harvest moon.
Yeah,
a harvest moon, I believe.
Exactly.
And we do have some pedestrians coming down the street here.
We do.
Yeah. So,
So
speak too soon, right?
right.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, I'm Jeff.
I'm Linda.
And remember, there's much more to see in the dark.